in this particular webinar.
Right. Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. Hello, friends. Welcome to this 56th webinar on the Secret Teachings of All Ages by Manly P. Hall. This webinar series is available on makara.us under the subheadings Moria Federation Webinars, then Webinar Series in Progress, as shown here. Previous episodes of this, The Secret Doctrine, and the Treatise on Cosmic Fire series are also available on YouTube. Just do a search for Francis Donald and the webinar or webinar series you wish to view. You can join any of these webinars on the homepage of moriafederation.com, right up here in the upper left-hand corner of the homepage. Alrighty then. We began last session by taking a look at Franz Hartmann's The Secret Symbols of the Rosicrucians, which defines the sun alchemically as, quote, the symbol of wisdom, the center of power or heart of things. We then took a look at the idea of the celestial sun working through the visible sun, a belief held by many of the ancients and which became a fundamental tenet of theosophy in the form of the central spiritual sun, the heart of the sun, and the visible sun. Next, we look at the Christ and his role as mediator and embodiment of the second principle. We then reviewed humanity's three principles, which MPH calls the threefold human spirit of man, as well as their lower reflection shown in this bottom grouping, the mental, astral, and physical vehicles. A topic that, compared to how MPH explores this here, DK expanded on very, very much in his writings. This was followed by a study of the symbolism of the six-pointed star, called the Signet of Solomon, which depicts the inner penetration of soul and personality on one level, at a larger level, spirit and matter, right? Next, we analyze the image in the center of the page entitled Surya, the regent of the sun, before starting a new section called the celestial inhabitants of the sun, where we learned about angels, archangels, and other celestial creatures who were seen by the Rosicrucians and medieval Illuminati. Really, actually, they were more like 18th century, as discs resembling small suns of radiant energy. We then took a look at the visionary illustrations of Johann Gichtel, who believed that the sun is the visible manifestation of God, that planets have souls and are undergoing a process of spiritual development. So you see, there's been a lot of schools of thought, mystery schools in the past, that had elements of theosophy to them, the ageless wisdom teachings, that eventually in the 19th century developed into Blavatsky and Bailey's theosophy. Finally, we learned about the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, which believes that solar angels reflect the light and life of the solar logos. That's exactly in keeping with theosophy. And this takes us up to where we left off last time, as well as to a new section entitled The Sun in Alchemical Symbology. So could we get a reader, please?
I'll start off.
Okay.
Gold is the metal of the sun and has been considered by many as crystallized sunlight. When gold is mentioned in alchemical tracts, it may be either the metal itself or the celestial orb, which is the source or spirit of gold. Sulfur, because of its fiery nature, was also associated with the sun. As gold was a symbol of spirit, and the base metals represented man's lower nature, certain alchemists were called miners and were pictured with picks and shovels digging into the earth in search of the precious metal. Those finer traits of character buried in the earthiness of materiality and ignorance. The diamond concealed in the heart of the black carbon illustrated the same principle. The Illuminati used the pearl hidden in the shell of an oyster at the bottom of the sea to signify spiritual powers. Thus, the seeker after truth became a pearl fisher. He descended into the sea of material illusion in search of understanding, termed by the initiates the pearl of great price.
Thank you, BL. Okay, first up, gold is the metal of the sun and has been considered by many as crystallized sunlight. When gold is mentioned in alchemical tracts, it may be either the metal itself or the celestial orb, which is the source or spirit of gold. So gold, which is the result of the purification and refinement of base metals such as lead, iron, and mercury through an involved process of heating, dissolving, distilling, and coagulating, represents the perfection of matter, the highest state of transformation, and is thus the ultimate goal of the alchemist. But it's important to remember that these processes are symbolic, representing stages of transformation, as described earlier, of the alchemist's own character and consciousness. DK tells us more about this transmutative process in a treatise on cosmic fire. Could we get a reader, please?
Yes, Vivian, can you read that for us, please?
Transmutation is a subject, excuse me, that from the earliest ages has occupied the attention of students, scientists, and alchemists. The power to change through the application of heat is, of course, universally recognized, but the key to the mystery or the secret of the systemic formula is advisedly guarded from all searchers and is only gradually revealed after the second initiation. The subject is so tremendous that it is only possible to indicate in broad, general outlines how it may be approached. The mind of the public turns naturally to the transmutation of metals into gold, with the aim in view of the alleviation of poverty. The mind of the scientist seeks the universal solvent, which will reduce matter to its primordial substance, release energy, and thus reveal the processes of evolution, and enable the seeker to build for himself, from the primordial base, the desired forms. The mind of the alchemist searches for the philosopher's stone, that effective transmuting agent which will bring about revelation, and the power to impose the will of the chemist upon the elemental forces, which work in, by, and through matter. The religious man, especially the Christian, recognizes the psychic quality of this transmutative power and frequently speaks in the sacred books of the soul being tried or tested 7 times in the fire. All these students and investigators are recognizing one great truth from their own constricted angle, and the whole lies not with one or another, but in the aggregate.
Thank you, Vivian. Anybody have any questions about this? It's always great when DK comments on one of the older disciplines, such as alchemy, and really lays out just how it appeals to different groups, right? From the materialists to the scientists, to the alchemists, and finally to the you could call it religious man, he calls it, right? He could also have added to the esotericist, right? Who, because there's a line of ascent, you could say, connected with the alchemical studies that is very much in keeping with what DK gives us in modern theosophy. Okay, all right, just keep in mind that dialogue is much more interesting than monologue. So if any of you have any thoughts or questions along the way, please speak up, and we'll, otherwise we'll just continue. Okay, next, sulfur, because of its fiery nature, was also associated with the sun. Alchemically, sulfur is associated with fire, and thus through that with the sun. In alchemical practice, it represents the expansive and volatile force that drives the processes of transformation and purification. Notice the abstraction, right? Yes, it's an actual element, a material, but in you could say in philosophical alchemy, which is what we're really interested in, it's that element, abstract element, that drives the processes of transformation and purification, and that's represented by sulfur on the physical plane. Interestingly, the alchemical symbol for sulfur is similar to that of the cardinal cross, both indicating the union of matter and spirit. Next up, as gold was the symbol of spirit and the base metals represented man's lower nature, certain alchemists were called miners and were pictured with picks and shovels digging into the earth in search of the precious metal, those finer traits of character buried in the earthiness of materiality and ignorance. I think the alchemists, possibly more than any other group, really made tremendous use of symbolism, and they have really a completely intact symbolical representation of the higher philosophical stages that one goes through. So this is a pretty straightforward metaphor. Kind of reminds me of the lyric from Neil Young's song, Heart of Gold, where he sings, "I'm just a miner for a heart of gold." You know, sitting there in the collective archetype, right? Next up, the diamond concealed in the heart of the black carbon illustrated the same principle. In The Light of the Soul, DK says, the shining forth of the higher self through the medium of the lower self produces the revelation of the divine or spiritual self. The matrix holds the diamond, and when the matrix reveals its hidden gem, the work of cutting and polishing is accomplished. The glory of the jewel will be seen. And finally, the Illuminati used a pearl hidden in the shell of an oyster at the bottom of the sea to signify spiritual powers. Thus, the seeker after truth became a pearl fisher. He descended into the sea of material illusion in search of understanding, termed by the initiates the pearl of great prize. In esoteric Hinduism, the blue pearl, or bindu, here held by Kuan Yin, is a symbol of inner vision and probably represents the pineal gland. The term Illuminati is often used as a catch-all term for any secret organization that aims to control world affairs and establish a new order. But MPH is probably here referring to the Bavarian Illuminati, which was an Enlightenment era secret society founded in 1776 that opposed superstition, religious influence, and abuses of state power. It was supposedly disbanded in 1785, but many believe that they continue to exist and were/are behind many major world events, including the French Revolution and the World Wars. Okay, next up, could we get a reader, please?
Leavon, can you read that for us, please?
When the alchemists stated that every animate and inanimate thing in the universe contained the seeds of gold, they meant that even the grains of sand possessed a spiritual nature, for gold was the spirit of all things. Concerning these seeds of spiritual gold, the following Rosicrucian axiom is significant. A seed is useless and impotent unless it is put in its appropriate matrix. Franz Hartmann comments on this axiom with these illuminating words. A soul cannot develop and progress without an appropriate body, because it is the physical body that furnishes the material for its development. See the pronoos of the Temple of Wisdom. The purpose of alchemy was not to make something out of nothing, but rather to fertilize and nurture the seed which was already present. Its processes did not.
Should be not.
Its processes did not actually create gold, but rather made the ever-present seed of gold grow and flourish. Everything which exists has a spirit, the seed of divinity within itself. And regeneration is not the process of attempting to place something where it previously had not existed. Regeneration actually means the unfoldment of the omnipresent divinity in man. That is, divinity may shine forth as a sun and illumine all with whom it comes in contact.
Thank you, Yvonne. Okay, first up, when the alchemists stated that every animate and inanimate thing in the universe contained the seeds of gold, they meant that even the grains of sand possess a spiritual nature. For gold was the spirit of all things. Concerning these seeds of spiritual gold, the following Rosicrucian axiom is significant. Quote, a seed is useless and impotent unless it is put in its appropriate matrix. So a seed of gold is here used as a metaphor for the imperishable spark of life or indwelling jiva at the core of each and every sentient being. The Rosicrucian axiom, a seed is useless and impotent unless it is put in its appropriate matrix, implies that spirit and form are complementary aspects of the same being and need each other to grow in consciousness, which is the purpose of manifestation. The vehicle and the indwelling spark are necessary to the process of becoming. Did I see a hand or was that something else?
Yes, no, we have one. Go ahead, please, Ariane.
Yes, Ariane here. This is one of the most incredible passages for me.
Oh, great.
So, yeah. Mhm. So this is really aligned with the Indian spirituality, you know, how they have the yoni and the lingam. They have this idea that there's something coming together, making a third, and that everything is alive, everything is endowed with spirituality, but we're not there for it. And that the seed needs its proper context. It's not going to, you know, when we talk in the West of the importance of bringing consciousness or witnessing something for it to exist. And it also reminds me of this, you know, this delusion, I can't help but link it to this, of the Americans and their foreign policy, because when we bomb a bridge, we're imagining that we are not destroying something that is alive, right? Because we're literally obliterating the metal and everything that exists in the bridge through that. And we have no sense of the aliveness, the livingness of metal and the mineral world, even though it's very slow in its evolutionary journey,
Mm.
and things that are of other, the beingness of other forms. And similarly in war, we don't see an account of like the livestock starved, the livestock killed or abandoned. So what I really, really appreciate about this is it's reminding us that at any moment we could experience that, nourish that seed, and that everything is alive. And so we would want to be there for that.
That's really nicely said. Um, exactly. The separatedness still reigns, over the earth, but there's significant movement in the direction of group consciousness and healing cleavages. But we're really in the middle of the process as we approach and begin to feel the significance of the Aquarian age, impacting our consciousness. But yeah, thank you for your comments. That's, really well said. Anybody else? Thoughts?
Ben says, everything I throw away, I say thank you for your service.
Oh, good. Good for you.
Thank you for your service.
That reminds me of the Native Americans' approach to it. Use every part. Don't waste anything, and thank it for the service and the use.
Yeah.
Okay, Yvonne's got her hand up. Go ahead, please, Yvonne.
Well, all material things are made up of devas, little deva existence. So they're all alive.
Yeah, that's right. The elementals that literally weave themselves into substance, So, just we can only imagine the folly that, the elders, initiates of high degree experience when they look at what we're doing, quote unquote, down here, right? But it's all part of the process. Separative mind comes before higher mind, and we're in that process of developing, really to a high level, the lower mind, uh, the qualities of lower mind as a fifth root race. This Aryan root race is very much connected with it, and that development involves a separative understanding of things. It's very much A to B relational form of understanding things, right? All right, anybody else?
I think that's it for the moment.
Okay. Okay, next up, Franz Hartmann comments on this axiom with these illuminating words. A soul cannot develop and progress without an appropriate body, because it is the physical body that furnishes the material for its development. Interesting. See in the Proneos of the Temple of Wisdom. So Dr. Franz Hartmann worked with Blavatsky and Olcott in Adyar, India, and later founded the German Theosophical Society. The full name of the book cited by MPH is In the Proneos of the Temple of Wisdom, containing the history of the true and the false Rosicrucians, with an introduction into the mysteries of the Hermetic philosophy. Proneos means vestibule or outer court. Immediately before the line cited by MPH, Hartmann states, the one from which all things are produced is perfect, and therefore all things contain within themselves the tendency and possibility for perfection. And this illustration, which is also on the cover of the book here, is the frontispiede. Okay. Next up, the purpose of alchemy was not to make something out of nothing, but rather to fertilize and nurture the seed which was already present. Its process did not actually create gold, but rather made the ever-present seed of gold grow and flourish. Key statement here. Alchemy is particularly fascinating because it describes the inner science of transmutation by means of a enlightened series of symbols, and also by a physical plane process. I don't know of any other discipline where you have that such intense detail in terms of the parallels between the inner philosophy and the outer metaphor for that philosophy. In the element lead, the tenets of alchemy tell us, lies the seed of gold, just as the lead of personality is ultimately animated and drawn inward and upward by the golden inner spark of monad. Okay, next. Everything which exists has a spirit, the seed of divinity within itself. And regeneration is not the process of attempting to place something where it previously had not existed. Regeneration actually means the unfoldment of the omnipresent divinity in man, that this divinity may shine forth as a sun and illumine all with whom it comes in contact. Okay, I saw a hand.
Yes, go ahead, Magda.
Yes, since to 0.2 milligrams of pure gold are found in human bodies and also in plants, could that be that what alchemists refer to is kind of expanding these solar seeds, the golden seeds in the human body, which might correspond to solar initiation somehow?
Well, I didn't know that. That's fascinating.
I just looked it up on Google.
Oh yeah, 0.2 milligrams. Wow,
Or
that's
70 kilograms, more or
what?
less.
Say again?
Every 70 kilograms of weight in a
Oh,
human body. Yeah.
it's 0.2 milligrams, right?
Yeah, 0.2 milligrams, especially in
Yeah.
various parts of the body, especially heart, brain, blood, and articulations, and I don't know how to say, arms and legs.
Oh, okay, yeah. Well, it's fascinating because it brings to life the metaphor, doesn't it?
Yep.
There's actually a physical component to this symbolism of the seed of gold. Of course, you don't want to get too seduced by the physical metaphor because but it's to me, it just illuminates the system, the philosophical system of alchemy, and I really like that. That's terrific. Thank you for that, Magda.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Thoughts on this? Okay. I was just reading the chat. Okay, Franz Hartmann expands on this theme in the book that we were just looking at. Can we get a reader, please?
Martha, can you read that for us, please? Martha?
I am.
Okay, okay.
Alchemy is to its highest aspect. Alchemy, in its highest aspect, deals with the spiritual regeneration of man and teaches how a god may be made out of a human being, or to express it more correctly, how to establish the conditions necessary for the development of divine powers in man, so that a human being may become a god by the power of God, in the same sense as a seed becomes a plant by the aid of the four elements and the action of the invisible fifth. Alchemy, in its more material aspect, teaches how minerals, metals, plants, and animals in man may be generated or made to grow from their seeds, or, in other words, how that generation, which is accomplished during long periods of time in the due course of the action of natural laws, may be accomplished in a comparatively short time, very short time, if these natural laws are guided and supplied with material by the spiritual knowledge of man. There is no doubt in my mind that gold can be made to grow by alchemical means, but it requires an alchemist to make the experiment succeed, and he who is attracted by the power of gold will not obtain possession of the spiritual power necessary to practice that art. It's taken from in the Pranas of the Temple of Wisdom.
Thank you, Martha. Well, this is interesting, because MPH is telling us that he actually believes in the possibility of a physical transformation of lead into gold, but that could only be done by one who is, you could say that the leading edge of their process is their own inner transformation, not by anyone who is choosing to do this method strictly for material gain, that it just, wouldn't come about. So that's fascinating, because many, if not most, believe that it's purely symbolical, it's purely an allegory, and that it doesn't have any physical plane reality. I've read some other tracts that are very convincing about, like the last great known alchemist. I think we looked at it in one of the webinars, who was said to actually really have created gold from lead. But interesting. I see a hand.
Yes, please go ahead, Ariane.
I cannot resist. So, when people think about karma, which is the law of karma, like the law of rebirth, they're thinking about events like good and bad karma that, pursues one like a shadow, basically. It's a consequence of one's own effects, basically, one's evoking and creating like God the events of one's life. So people have a sort of an idea about that. But what they don't understand, I think, and what is less known, especially in these popularized ideas, is that karma is also a vibration. And among the Jains in India, they talked about Karman particles and the fact that,
Wow.
yeah, it's really incredible. So they knew even back then, because this is one of the oldest religions there are, and this is the religion that brought meditation to humanity, it seems, that that the not only the body and, Alice Bailey and DK, they talk about the three permanent atoms, that which survives death and follows one to the soul. That is, there's an atom of the physical body where it is at death, an atom of the emotional body, its level of psychological and emotional maturity, and an element of the mind, its development, that is recorded or integrated in the soul. But the Jains believed also that the quality of vibration is also determinative. It enters the soul, and the soul itself is changed by the vibration. And so when we don't think about that, how we are experiencing our life, are we bringing consciousness to it? And what is the level of our vibration? When we talk about, like, for instance, a lower state, which we ordinarily equate with our moods, our emotions, but it is directly tied to our level of consciousness, then we're ignoring a very big factor in our own spiritual development, I think. And I think this is what it's hinting at.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I had never thought of it before. You brought it to mind that you could look at karma as an alchemical process that transmutes our negative deeds, which is normal for the developing personality. It's unavoidable, right? But that's the leaden. It's a demonstration of the lead of our errors, you could say, and that karma is the agency, like an alchemical method, that allows us to eventually transform that lead into gold. Not just the broad outline of the personality becoming the soul, but even, all the many lesser events of the purification process that karma involves, of the negative karma being erased through the laws of karma. That is that place of balance that takes us back to a point of equanimity. So thank you for that.
Yeah, I just want to follow up with one more thought because this is going in a certain direction. So when we think of the fourth ray, and obviously you have a lot of that, I have some of that too in my mind. I think maybe that's your personality, but at any rate, so when you think of the fourth ray and how it's the ray associated, the energies associated with harmony through conflict, then that ray seems to typify how we learn on this planet and how we learn on the solar system. And it seems to definitely be an attribute of the God ensouling this planet. And the reason why I'm saying that is that karma is made manifest through dramatic enactments, in which we have an experience that encapsulates something of us that is either lacking or not seen, and is given to us so that we can be both the witness and the participant. And obviously the God and the gods associated with our planet and with the solar system are very much wedded to that, because only certain things can be learned and experienced through drama. And the tension, like you can see in any novel, and so many works of art, of like coming to terms with the inherent conflict, perhaps just the issue of being alive. What is the inherent conflict in that, for instance? That is essential to our awakening, and that we wouldn't want to see that as just beneath us, that I have to conflict is beneath me, when it's a major tool, unfortunately or fortunately, trauma, karma on this planet at this time, and we have to move through it. We're not going to be able to go around it at this time to get to the next level.
Yeah, really good thoughts. I think the alchemical, and there's another thing I hadn't thought of, that how similar the described alchemical process is to that process of harmony resulting from conflict, that you have the disparity of the opposites and the impurities, which have to, through some process of becoming, which the fourth ray brings forward, achieve harmony, right? So it's very much in line with the teachings that we're reading about here. Good thoughts, Ariane. I appreciate it. Anyone else?
Yes, we have a couple of comments here. And Veronica, thank you as always. She says, Poneus. Neos is the temple, and pro before the temple, or the entrance before entering the temple.
Beautiful, thank you. It's always good to have a Greek language person in these webinars. That's terrific.
And then Magda says, if you try to transform dense material lead into dense material gold, you cannot transform your spiritual density, alias lead, into spiritual light. And this concept could connect with necessary purification from egoism, materialism, and glamour.
Yeah, good point that, if your focus is on dense material gold, you'll never get out of the density represented by dense material lead. You you have to have an elevatory process available to you, and alchemy has detailed examples of that process that it uses in symbolism and involving different components, including sulfur, um, that allow you to do this. But they all have their philosophical, um, are all paired with philosophical ideas of purification. So, good thoughts. Anyone else?
Nope, that's all I see right now.
Okay, great. All right. Next up, a new section called the Midnight Sun. Could we get a reader, please?
Scott, can you read that for us, please?
Okay. The Midnight Sun. Apuleius said that describing his initiation, vide ante, see it before, at midnight I saw the sun shining with a splendid light. The midnight sun was also part of the mystery of alchemy. It symbolized the spirit in man shining through the darkness of his human organisms. It also referred to the spiritual sun in the solar system, which the mystic could see as well as at midnight as at high noon. The material earth being powerless to
Yeah.
obstruct the rays of this divine orb. The mysterious lights which illuminated the temples of the Egyptian mysteries during the nocturnal hours were said by some to be reflections of the spiritual sun gathered by the magical powers of the priests. The weird light seen 10 miles below the surface of the earth by I Am the Man in that remarkable Masonic allegory, Etidorphia, Aphrodite spelled backward, may well refer to the mysterious midnight sun of the ancient rites. Primitive conceptions concerning the warfare between the principles of good and evil were often based upon the alternations of day and night. During the Middle Ages, the practices of black magic were confined to the nocturnal hours, and those who served the spirit of evil were called black magicians, while those who served the spirit of good were called white magicians. Black and white were associated respectively with night and day, and the endless conflict of light and shadow is alluded to many times in the mythologies of various peoples.
Thank you, Scott. Okay, first up, Apuleius said when describing his initiation, vide ante, at midnight, I saw the sun shining with a splendid light. The midnight sun was also part of the mystery of alchemy. It symbolized the spirit in man shining through the darkness of his human organisms. As Scott mentioned, vide ante means see previous reference, here referring to Apuleius' vision of Isis in the Metamorphoses, which MPH is discussed in earlier in this section. So in addition to representing hang on a second, there we go. Representing a transcendent state whose source of consciousness lies beyond the visible, the midnight sun is also related to an alchemical system called, and this was today's frontispiece, the green lion devouring the sun. The lion here represents the raw and powerful force of nature, the prima materia that contains the seed of gold. It also symbolizes the corrosive action of the agua regia, the royal water, which is a mixture of nitric and hydrochloric acid that can dissolve gold. The lion's devouring action represents dissolution and reduction of gold to its essence. which is the first step in the process of alchemical transformation. Next, it also referred to the spiritual sun in the solar system. We're talking about the dark sun here, or the midnight sun, which the mystic could see as well at midnight as at high noon. The material earth being powerless to obstruct the rays of this divine orb. The statement refers to what DK calls the subjective sun, wherein lies the mystery of polarity symbolized by the visible and midnight or dark suns. In alchemy, the dark sun or sol niger or Niger represents the nigredo stage, a phase of decomposition during which the alchemist's material and metaphorically the alchemist's self is broken down, right? So the material, the symbol, but that is metaphorical of the actual personality self of the alchemist. Thus, the dark sun symbolizes the necessary decay before transformation. Next, the mysterious lights which illuminated the temples of the Egyptian mysteries during the nocturnal hours were said by some to be reflections of the spiritual sun gathered by the magical powers of the priests. Pretty extraordinary comment. So both the heart of the sun and the central spiritual sun would have been known by the Egyptian priests. For example, in the Book of the Celestial Cow, Ra is depicted as a self-generated being who emerged from the primordial waters of Nun. Ra, of course, is the great sun god of Egypt, right? So a self-generated being. He then created his children, Shu and Tefnut, before assuming his position in the sky as the visible sun. So, barely veiled, we have a teaching about the subjective sun in this Book of the Celestial Cow. Next, the weird light seen 10 miles below the surface of the earth by I Am the Man in that remarkable Masonic allegory, Edidorfa, Aphrodite spelled backwards, may well refer to the mysterious midnight sun of the ancient rites. All right. I Am the Man is the narrator and protagonist of the novel Edidorfa, a Masonic allegory and science fiction story by John Uri Lloyd. In the story, he is a former member of a secret society who is kidnapped and taken to a cave, where he meets a guide who leads him on a journey to the center of the earth. On his journey, he meets Edidorfa, who is the epitome of beauty, but has no facial features, no hair, eyebrows, eyelashes, ears, mouth, nose, nor eyes, but only a smooth and shining surface where these features should be. She communicates with I Am the Man telepathically and reveals to him the secrets of nature and of the soul. Her name, which reverses the spelling of Aphrodite, suggests a being that stands in a causal relationship, like a mirrored inner causal relationship to the outer beauty of Aphrodite. Gotta love this stuff. MPH's final paragraph associates good and evil and black and white magicians with day and night. Pretty straightforward stuff. So we'll move on. Any thoughts, questions developing there that you can't resist asking or speaking about? Feel free. There we have it. Ariane,
There we
go
go.
ahead.
I just, you know, when you mention Aphrodite and Venus, we have to perhaps think of the planet, right? That is the progenitor of our planet, and that everything that we've received comes from Venus, the goddess of love and all giving and beauty and nurturance, and is the source of this planet. And so I think that's interesting that he describes her as a mirror, that we are meant through this gift to find ourselves. It's not about finding Venus per se. It's more about finding ourselves.
Yeah, well said. It's a fantastic allegory. It actually would be worth a read. I haven't read it to see if there are, you know, some details that give us a little more idea of what this, you know, this causal mirror image is all about. You know, but you know, I agree with you. There's definitely a metaphor there with Venus and the Earth. You know, with Aphrodite being the outer demonstration of the love, wisdom that and light that Venus carries. You know, that Venus would then be equal to this being Edidorfa or Edidorpa, actually. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Okay. So next up, can we get a reader, please?
Yes. Ann Parker, can you read that for us, please?
Sure. The Egyptian demon Typhon was symbolized as part crocodile and part hog because these animals are gross and earthy in both appearance and temperament. Since the world began, living things have feared the darkness. Those few creatures who use it as a shield for their maneuvers were usually connected with the spirit of evil. Consequently, cats, bats, toads, and owls are associated with witchcraft. In certain parts of Europe, it is still believed that at night black magicians assume the bodies of wolves and roam around destroying. From this notion originated the stories of the werewolves. Serpents, because they lived in the earth, were associated with the spirit of darkness. As the battle between good and evil centers around the use of the generative forces of nature, winged serpents represent the regeneration of the animal nature of man, or those great ones in whom this regeneration is complete. Among the Egyptians, the sun's rays are often shown ending in human hands. Masons will find a connection between these hands and the well-known paw of the lion, which raises all things to life with its grip.
Thank you, Anne. Okay, first up, the Egyptian demon Typhon was symbolized as part crocodile and part hog because these animals are gross and earthly in both appearance and temperament. Well, there's a little more to the association with the crocodile than just that it was a gross earthly appearance. You know, the crocodile, the Makara, the constellation Capricorn all represent the source of our spirituality, one source anyway. So this description representing the shadow of Typhon is very exoteric. But interestingly, the inclusion of this reference in the section on the midnight sun suggests Typhon's true identity, which is the dragon. Remember the winged serpents that he describes? Of the transcendent upper darkness, represented by the great bear, with which Typhon was associated in earlier, more esoteric Egyptian teachings. A hand?
Yeah, Yvonne, hold on a minute though, before you go. Is that a little baby in his tummy?
That was why I was going to ask. He's carrying a baby in his tummy.
Yeah, he was considered the father mother of all monsters. So, in other words, the archetypal evil being. But as I said, you always have this reversal. You have it also with Satan, who Blavatsky describes as being the highest of the Arupa gods, and who refused to descend into matter. And the church just did the reversal. Well, the same thing happened with and made Satan, who he's mostly represented or understood to be today, the same thing happened between the earlier Egyptian pharaohs, kingdoms, and the later, where Typhon, suffered that same descent, that same fall. But what's the true character? Well, the first ray has inherently a destructive aspect to it, and I think this is what links the two. But yeah, good eye for catching the baby in there. Anyone else?
I have a comment. I just can't find the hand. Yeah, I think I mentioned this before a couple months ago about how Sigmund Freud, who collected a lot of original statuary from ancient Greece and earlier, and part of his compulsion working was so he could purchase more. Sort of like, just it was very evocative for him. So he had this little statue of Thoth on his desk, and it was one of his favorite statues, because he would take it and he would touch his head while he was like writing, like pet it, which is different. I think I mentioned his statue of Athena, which he would let his patients hold and remark on.
How extraordinary.
Yeah, isn't that extraordinary? Because
Yeah.
the fact he gave Athena, and she was like missing her spear, and she had, like, I think I mentioned the emblem of Medusa on her breastplate.
Mhm.
That was where his idea about women having a castration complex, he was so fixed by that. But with Thoth, he had like this personal relationship. He was keeping that god close at hand on his desk. He wasn't using that in the same way as his other statuary.
How interesting. Yeah, and earlier in this series on the secret teachings, we learned about Pymander, Thoth is really an embodiment of, who's a third ray active intelligence avatar in Egypt, and who was the outer representative, the avatar of Pymander, who in a vision described himself as divine mind, right? So how perfect that Freud would use this statue of Thoth to touch his head, to stimulate his own thinking processes. That's a great story. Thank you. Anyone else? Thoughts, questions?
That's all I see.
Okay. Okay, next up. Since the world began, living things have feared the darkness. Those few creatures who use it as a shield for their maneuvers were usually connected with the spirit of evil. Consequently, cats, bats, toads, and owls are associated with witchcraft. In certain parts of Europe, it is still believed that at night black magicians assume the bodies of wolves and roam around destroying. Assuming the body of a wolf is a form of shape-shifting, the ability to change one's physical appearance and characteristics. This method is used by both black and white shamans, not just black, suggesting it's all in the motive, right? It's rather than the shape-shifting itself that determines a magician's nature. For example, Don Juan, the shamanic mentor of Carlos Castaneda, who consistently demonstrated his selfless, positive character, had the ability and often became a crow, right? Next. From this notion originated the stories of the werewolves. There's an interesting paragraph on lycanthropy, or transforming oneself into a werewolf, in the book Transcendental Magic by Eliphas Levi. Could we get a reader, please?
Yes, Magda, can you read that for us, please?
Saint Augustine questioned seriously whether Apuleius could have been changed into an ass by Thessalian sorceress, and theologians have long debated about the transformation of Nebuchadnezzar into a wild beast, which things merely prove that the eloquent doctor of Hippo was unacquainted with magical secrets, and that the theologians in question were not advanced far in exegesis. We are concerned in this chapter with different and more incredible marvels, which are at the same time uncontestable. I refer to lycanthropy, or the nocturnal transformation of men into wolves, long celebrated in country tales of the twilight by the histories of werewolves. These accounts are so well attested that, with a view to their explanation, skeptical science has recourse to furious mania and masquerading as animals. But such hypotheses are puerile and account for nothing. Let us turn elsewhere for the secret of the phenomena which have been observed on this subject, and begin with establishing, first, that no person has ever been killed by a werewolf, except by suffocation, without effusion of blood and without wounds. Second, that werewolves, though tracked, pursued, and even maimed, have never been killed on the spot. Third, that persons suspected of these transformations have always been found at home after a werewolf chase, more or less broken up, sometimes dying, but invariably in their natural form.
Thank you. What an extraordinary teaching he gives us here. No way of verifying his claims, his first, second, and third claims, but it's he has a natural authority. Eliphas Levi has a natural authority that suggests that he's telling the truth. Any thoughts about this?
Ariane says, a truly great read.
Oh, yes, indeed.
She says, Apuleius is the golden ass, University of Indiana Press.
Right. Okay, let's see what we have. Right, next up. Serpents, because they lived in the earth, were associated with the spirit of darkness. As the battle between good and evil centers around the use of generative forces of nature, winged serpents represent the regeneration of the animal nature of man, or those great ones in whom this regeneration is complete. Of course, you're also talking about dragons, who at their highest level become dragons of wisdom, who are a grand form of winged serpent. We've talked about the dual meaning of serpents in previous webinars. In ancient Egypt, the cobra goddess Wadjet, shown here, was the guardian of the cosmos and the patron of the kings. Her emblem, the uraeus, was worn on the crowns of the pharaohs as a sign of their authority and divine protection. I'll also add here that it's also a sign of reception, the ability to receive the higher impress of the gods. However, the god Apep, shown here, who was also depicted as a serpent, was the enemy of the sun god Ra and the embodiment of chaos and evil. Together, they represent a primordial duality. And the fact that they are both serpents indicates their unity on cosmic levels, because at some point, all dualities are synthesized. And this represents this particular kind of fundamental duality. You know, you could even go with the idea of higher and lower mind, wisdom, and mere knowledge, you know. But, you know, ultimately spirit and matter. In ancient Greece, serpents were associated with healing, wisdom, and transformation. The god Asclepius, who was the patron of medicine, had a staff with a serpent coiled around it, which is still a symbol of health and healing together today. On the other hand, the goddess Athena, who is the patroness of wisdom, had a shield with the head of the Gorgon Medusa, who had snakes for hair and could turn anyone who looked at her into stone, the most material of all substances, suggesting that esoterically, evil is in essence an orientation to the material aspect. And finally, in Hinduism, serpents are revered as divine beings and symbols of fertility, power, and wisdom. The Nagas are a race of serpent-like creatures that live in the underworld and guard the treasures and secrets of the earth. They can take human form and interact with humans, sometimes as friends, sometimes as enemies. See a hand?
Yes, go ahead, Magda.
Yes, the Essenes community describe this duality of the snake, the serpent, in this way, in this simple way, meaning that man is joined with the tempting serpent, with temptation serpent.
Right.
While in order to dissociate man from the tempting serpent, we can direct ourselves to the wiseness serpent, the snake of wiseness, which is joined with the mother. And I was wondering if this concept is can be referred to the concept of the doppelganger, so the double, which we, which must not erase from ourself, because it's in ourself. We can just pursue the serpent of wiseness, keeping inside ourselves the other serpent, which has formed us. And so these two concepts parallel, a correct parallel?
Oh, I think so. You know, you also have Castor and Pollux, the Gemini twins. You know, they can represent personality and soul. And, you know, even fictions like Jekyll and Hyde represent this duality, this doppelganger. You know, in the first root races, the higher being projects into substance a chahaya, a kind of mirror image of its true self, and then that mirror image over a period of eons struggles to reconnect with its source, right? And, that's very much the literal doppelganger idea, you know. So, yeah, good thoughts. Anyone else?
Yes, she hadn't finished typing when we moved on, but Ariane was talking about two books that should be read together. She says they're life-changing. One is Appiellis's The Golden Ass, and the other is C.S. Lewis, Until We Have Faces.
Oh, okay. I don't know that second one.
Yeah, they're in the chat. So.
Interesting. Okay, thank you.
I have some remarks also about these snakes, if there's room for it.
Go for it.
Can you go
Can I what? You dropped.
can you go back to the slide with Asclepius?
Yeah, sure.
Yes, thank you. On the left. Yeah, I'm actually a doctor, and so I feel a very personal relationship to Asclepius and what he's symbolizing. But this, this image of the snake crawling up the staff, which Michelangelo uses in, painting at the Vatican, the tempting of Eve and Adam in the garden. So that's, obviously showing the spine, the rising of the Kundalini force, that good health involves having possession of one's own energy. And when one is depressed or ill, chronically ill, which may be just a karmic event or could be even group karma when we look at COVID, that there's some kind of disconnect between the spiritual self and the individual self, and that's not allowing these energies to rise in a healthy manner. And relationship to the Adam and Eve story, where you see in Vatican the snake rising up the tree of good and evil. Benjamin Crumb said something very interesting about the symbolism behind the tree of good and evil, which we normally think perhaps is about humanity choosing discernment, rationally coming into experience and starting their evolutionary journey, not as a sinful process, but as a inherent process in the evolutionary journey when spirit takes form. And so one starts at that, and it has a slow evolutionary journey back to the Godhead, in which one moves beyond judgment. But Benjamin Crumb said the issue there is that knowledge itself is also a material, something material. So we know that thoughts are objects. So if knowledge is material, the problem is in possessing knowledge. And so when we're identified with our thinking, or identified with our beliefs, partially because we've been conditioned, then we're not able to find the livingness of the moment. I think that's what he was alluding to. And that sort of contrasts this Medusa figure where there's something so terrifying, that we cannot face about ourselves, that we cannot actually go on at that point, because we don't have the capacity within ourselves to handle what we've experienced. It's sort of like the opposite of the other thing, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, and you can't help but see this image of Medusa as like the ultimate portrait of lower mind, right? Cut off from any higher impress at all. You're just, you're fixed. You've been you've been fixed in this state. And that's very much one of the big problems with this root race, the Aryan root race, where the whole purpose of it is development of mind. But it's in the early sub-races of this root race, it's all about development of lower mind. And in a way, you could say that's what we're looking at here. All these snakes could be the typical thought forms that we all have to deal with that do not lead to a higher understanding. Eventually, and you could see it as being represented in this staff, the upward spiral, leads to the impress from higher mind. And I think you're absolutely right about the story of Eve. It's absolutely a necessary process along the way. It's one of the many stories that the Christians got horribly wrong, which is the idea that the tree of knowledge is somehow to be avoided, and that we should, what we should have done is maintained our pristine spiritual state. But in fact, the process, of leaving the Father's house and going into matter demands the eating of that apple at a certain stage. You could call that really the overshadowing by the soul, by the Manasaputras, that then allowed us to develop the ability to interface with mind, and which is initially that of seeking knowledge. I mean, just external knowledge, right? But eventually allows one to come under the impress of the higher mind. And this is, this Medusa shield is kind of a warning, not to take the left-hand path into black magic, which is all about mental development, because the lower mind development, because the eighth sphere, the eighth plane, does not lie below the seventh physical plane. It's tangential to the four lower subplanes of the mental plane. It's adjunct. It's an offshoot of lower mind development. And that's what leads to the dark path, right? So yeah, good thoughts. Thank you. Anyone else?
And yes, Marguerite says, the rod with the serpent, the rod of Asclepius, was chosen in 1948 as the symbol of the World Health Organization.
Isn't that great? Yeah, there was some inspired. Somebody was inspired by, to do that, because when you link such an archetypal symbol, to an organization that's that important, that's really an important event. Okay, anyone else?
No, that's all I see right now.
Okay, finally, among the Egyptians, the sun's rays are often shown ending in human hands. Masons will find a connection between these hands and the well-known paw of the lion, which raises all things to life with its grip. Okay, the sun's rays ending in human hands are unique, at least in Egyptian lore, to the sun god Aten, worshipped by Akhenaten at Amarna. The Masonic lion's paw is a symbol of a grip that is used in the Master Mason degree, which represents the strength and courage of the lion and the power of resurrection and rebirth. Exoterically, it is also associated with the lion of the tribe of Judah, a biblical and messianic title that refers to Christ or Solomon. There are pictures of this grip online, this lion's paw grip. But since it is supposed to be secret, I choose not to show it here. The lion's paw is used to raise the candidate from his symbolic death and to initiate him into the mysteries and secrets of Freemasonry. I found this curious illustration online, but I have no idea whether it is, as claimed, copied from an Egyptian monument. This lion especially doesn't look particularly Egyptian to me, but I thought it was curious enough to include. Okay, any thoughts or questions? Next up, the last section of this chapter we've been at for 8 webinars, entitled Solar Colors. Can we get a reader, please?
Janet, can you read that for us, please?
Sure. Am I loud enough?
Yes, you're good.
Okay. The theory so long held of 3 primary and 4 secondary colors is purely exoteric. For since the earliest periods, it has been known that there are 7 and not 3 primary colors, the human eye being capable of estimating only 3 of them. Thus, although green can be made by combining blue and yellow, there is also a true or primary green, which is not a compound. This can he proved by breaking up the spectrum with a prism. Helmholtz found that the so-called secondary colors of the spectrum could not be broken up into their supposedly primary colors. Thus, the orange of the spectrum, if passed through a second prism, does not break up into red and yellow, but remains orange. Consciousness, intelligence, and force are fittingly symbolized by the colors blue, yellow, and red. The therapeutic effects of the colors, moreover, are in harmony with this concept, for blue is a fine, soothing, electric color, yellow a vitalizing and refining color, and red an agitating and heat-giving color. It has also been demonstrated that minerals and plants affect the human constitution according to their colors. Thus, a yellow flower generally yields a medicine that affects the constitution in a manner similar to the yellow light or the musical tone mi. An orange flower will influence in a manner similar to the orange light, and being one of so-called secondary colors corresponds either to the tone re or to the chord of do and mi. Do and mi.
Thank you, Janet.
Sorry.
Okay, first up, the theory so long held of 3 primary and 4 secondary colors is purely exoteric. For, since the earliest periods, it has been known that there are 7 and not 3 primary colors, the human eye being capable of estimating only 3 of them. Very, very interesting statement. Science tells us that in the additive color model, here to the left, which is used for light sources, the primary colors are red, green, and blue. And the secondary colors are cyan, magenta, and yellow. In the subtractive model, which is used for pigments, the order is reversed. The primary colors are cyan, magenta, and yellow, and the secondary colors are red, green, and blue. But this is a physical plane model and is thus purely exoteric. Through the agency of the opened inner eye, the Pythagoreans, who used color as a tool for healing, meditation, and initiation, knew that there were 7 primary colors, corresponding to the 7 rays, the 7 notes of the musical scale, the 7 planets, and the 7 chakras. Some of these more esoteric colors are not at all like their physical plane counterparts. Hang on a second. For example, DK tells us that the red associated with the first ray cannot be represented with physical plane color, which is not surprising since it represents the vibration of pure spirit. The phrase, the human eye being capable of estimating only 3 of them, only 3 colors, is puzzling until we take into account the fact that the human eye has 3 types of cone cells: short, medium, and long. that are sensitive to different wavelengths of light, as shown here. These cone cells respond to the colors blue, green, and red, respectively, and their signals are processed by the brain to create the perception of color. Thus, although green can be made by combining blue and yellow, there is also a true or primary green, which is not a compound. This can be proved by breaking up the spectrum with a prism. So here's a prism with its 7 prismatic colors. Since we have a cone that is sensitive to green, MPH might have better illustrated his point with the color yellow, which we can only see by combining the input from the red and green cones. Nevertheless, he's right in his talking about the color green as also being not the true green, not the primary green that we are seeing, but rather the physical plane green. Next, Helmholtz found that the so-called secondary colors of the spectrum could not be broken up into their supposed primary colors. Thus, the orange of the spectrum, if passed through a second prism, does not break up into red and yellow, but remains orange. Well, maybe it was harder to prove in the early 20s. This statement now is just plain false. Actually, Helmholtz was one of the main proponents of the trichromatic theory of color vision, which explains how the primary colors can be mixed to produce secondary colors. So orange can be broken into red and yellow by a secondary prism, as originally proved by Isaac Newton. I'm not sure why MPH puts forward this idea. However, to my mind, this in no way disproves MPH's premise that there are 7 rather than 3 primary colors, if for no other reason than that these 7 colors are synonymous with the energies of the 7 rays, as indicated, for example, by DK's statement that, quote unquote, indigo is the goal of our endeavor, meaning that becoming one with the energy of the second ray is the goal of our process of becoming. How are we doing? Oh, we could go one more. There's also the fact that, as DK says in Letters on Occult Meditation, well, actually, let's get a reader for this.
And Veronica, can you read that for us, please?
Colors, as manifested on the physical plane, show at the crudest and harshest, even the most exquisite of shades, as seen by the physical eye, is hard and harsh, compared to those on the emotional plane, and as the finer matter of the other planes is contacted, the beauty, the softness, and the exquisite quality of the different hues grow with each transition. When the ultimate in synthetic color is reached, the beauty transcends all conception.
Thank you. Okay, so, just this statement alone shows us that the source of the outer colors, are not, doesn't come through the quote unquote eye of the beholder on the physical plane, but has its inner causal color sources, and that these become finer and more vibrant as you move up through the planes. The Buddhic plane is said to be the actual source of color. That's where the vibration coalesces into color. And certainly Buddhic colors are going to bear little resemblance to the colors seen by the physical eye. And that's where we have to stop today. We'll continue next time. We'll have, unfortunately, the first Sunday of the month of June is, I think, the last day of the conference. Isn't that right, BL?
Well, let me see.
I think it is. It's June 2nd. Is that correct?
You know,
And
it is, but the conference closes at noon. And so I
noon,
still have it
what time
on
zone? Noon at what time?
GMT.
GMT. Okay, so we're much earlier, so we can.
We're later. We're or earlier, or we're good is my understanding, so we can still do it.
Okay.
Don't get me confused again.
Oh yeah, I won't. I promise. Yeah, yeah.
We're going to be
Well,
at 7 p.m. GMT, and the conference will be long over, so we can do
right.
2 June for the next secret teaching of all ages.
Okay, the trick is going to be for me to come up with a webinar. You know, since I am a prime mover with the conference material, as you are. So
Yeah, I
yeah.
understand all that, but Mr., I've got my presentation set so far in advance that
Awesome.
I know it's been a really crazy time right now.
Yeah.
Ariane has her hand up. Go ahead.
Yes,
Yeah,
Ariane.
I can't help it. Can I just read a short, very, very short passage to end from The Leaves of Moria's Garden, 1925,
Sure.
from Helena
Sure.
Rourke, that sums up this discussion today in this beautiful slideshow. It's on page 174, number 20. There is an Oriental riddle. What is it that likes to be buried? Answer: a seed.
Oh, right.
Precisely the seed of a plan must be buried in the ground, but when it begins to come to life, it grows only upward. The teacher sees new possibilities, and the fire of the step chases the riders in one direction. Amidst the dusty daisies rises a lily of heavenly purple. It is better to live near the celestial flower, for earthly flowers are the sole living bond between earth and heaven. In the creation of floral pollen, there are precipitated, as it were, crystals of prana. Without frivolity, one could say that in flowers, the heaven settles down upon earth. If the earth were deprived of flowers, half of its vitality would disappear. Just as important is the snow, and like beacons of salvation, stand the snowy mountains.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Thank you for that. Okay, you all. We will see you. I'll figure out a way to pull together a presentation. And for the 2nd. And so we will see you then. Otherwise, you want to do some announcing for the coming events here?
Yeah, the next Treatise on Cosmic Fire is 10 May. So Friday, is it this coming Friday? Yes. Okay.
Yes, it is.
And then the next Secret Doctrine is going to be on the 19th of May.
Okay, good. And that'll be, I believe, the last of these webinars before
The conference, yeah.
the conference, which starts on the 20th or 21st. So just a few days before that. So yeah, if you all haven't looked into the conference website, you want to check it out. There's going to be some really great presentations. I'm really excited about the conference this year and the material that we're covering. So yeah, check it out.
Yeah,
And
the ceremonial, oh, sorry.
go
The
ahead.
ceremonial workshop is the 20 to the 22nd. The Gemini full moon, the Festival of the Christ, is the 23rd of May. The esoteric workshop starts the 24th to the 26th of May. And then the Ray seminar picks up on the 26th of May through the 28th of May. And the main conference starts 29 May to 2 June.
There
And
you have it.
all that's there that last day, 2 June, is the closing ceremony. So we're good with
Right.
the Stoa.
Good. Okay, you all be well, and we'll see you next time. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.